Shadows stretch where the light won't go. Whispers hum in a voice too low. Fingers trace on a frosted pane. A chill remains, a chill remains. Echoes in the dark, they call your name. The record spins, it's never the same. A creak, a crack, a fading spark. Lost in the echoes, lost in the dark. Footsteps fall, but no one wants there. Breath of wind that tangles the air. A clock that ticks but skips its beat. Time retreats, time retreats. Echoes in the dark. They call your name, the record spins. The record spins, it's never the same. A creak, a crack, a fading spark. Lost in the echoes, lost in the echoes. Echoes in the dark, they call your name. The record spins, it's never the same. A creak, a crack, a fading spark. Lost in the echoes, lost in the dark. Footsteps fall, but no one's there. Breath of wind that tickles the air. A clock that ticks but skips its beat. Time retreats, time retreats. Close your eyes, the veil is thin. Hear the scratch of ghosts begin. Echoes in the dark. They call your name, the record spins. The record spins, it's never the same. A creak, a crack, a fading spark. Lost in the echoes, lost in the echoes. Needles hiss in the vinyl moans. A lullaby in fractured tones. Do you dare to play it back? The haunting groove, the endless track.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Vet Nation Unexplained, which is that was done without a voice modulator. So
Nation Unexplained.
So this is the brainchild of the hairy Hawaiian sitting there on green screen, and
I'm a little nervous, everybody, but today is our first episode.
This is the very first episode, but this is the brainchild of Kahanu, and we are thankful that he even suggested it as a kind of a passing. Hey, what if? And so here it is as a reality. So make sure that you are sharing this out and make sure that you tell other vets that you know that Skipper, you got to take my name tag down because it's blocking my face. Right. Maybe. But tell other vets that we are looking for their stories, and this is specific for vets. We do want vets to have a place to tell their stories. Yes, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of channels on YouTube and Rumble that are all about the paranormal, and there are some vet specific that definitely focus on telling supernatural and unexplained stories, but those are almost always just like, oh, hey, so we had this combat situation and something really weird happened during it. And there are some really interesting stories, especially from Iraq, about gin. And for most of you that are watching, when I say gin in this situation, it's not the alcoholic drink that your grandma likes. It's the Middle
DG
East.
or DGJINN.
Yeah, it's a very specific, especially to the Arab and Bedouin cultures, and with the Muslim cultures. They have, believe it or not, they have a very strong belief in supernatural activity in their cultures.
And
And
the giants in Afghanistan too.
well, yeah, that's a very interesting story. And I'm actually going to be reaching out to the guys from the Lore Lodge to see if we can get them to come on and talk about it, because they did a really great breakdown of it. So what we want to focus in on are vets who have stories that are either related to their time in, whether they're combat or not, or personal life experiences from their youth or after their time in the service, where they have experienced something that they just can't explain and they don't know who to talk to about it, or they want to, for lack of better terminology, a safe space to come and discuss those things. So, like most of us have scary stories. Like I've been doing this show with Skipper for almost 5 years now, and I can tell you tons of scary stories about doing my shows with Skipper, and some of them are from our days with Juan when we were over on Red American Media still. So if you've got ghost stories or unexplained stories from your life, and you're a vet, or you have a vet family member who told you a story and they're no longer with us to tell, please reach out. You can reach out to Skipper, me, or Kahanu, and we will bring you on and let you tell your story. And so, Kahanu, this is your puppy. This was your brainchild. And
Yeah.
You weren't super ready today. You already said you were nervous and you didn't know how to start. So this is your one break. This is why I said I'll take the lead in. From now on, when we do the show, you're explaining what we're talking about from the outset, and I'm just going to remain resident expert.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Like TC said, this is our first episode of Veteran Nation Unexplained. We're going to be...
I am now traumatized.
Today's subject is going to be about the stone tape theory. So if you don't know what that is, we will be going over that. But I'm not too super knowledgeable in it. I'm actually confused. I know TC knows more than I do, and I'm looking at these things from a personal perspective as well.
So, Skipper, I sent you a couple of links. Just pick one. Just pick one of those two, and we'll go with whatever one you pick first, and then we'll kind of get. Oh yeah, I love this one. Turn your volume up, guys.
Here, let me make sure the volume is up on this.
Hello?
Interesting.
So there's some they put in there. Someone's here, and like Georgie pointed out in chat, sounds like I'm in here. Either way, it's really hard to tell. But this is an example of a disembodied voice, and we hear this especially if you watch any of the paranormal ghost hunting shows on what is it, Travel Channel and Discover. They really love those.
Come play with me. I'm right here.
Yeah, that's so creepy. Actually, I'm now terrified. But there could be a lot said for disembodied voices, and especially on the shows that that you have a tendency to watch them on. This one has always struck me as very legitimate, and the reason I picked this one is because of the fact that this has, and we in Kahanu, and I will, well, Kahanu will tell you that we were kind of like, what's the difference between a residual haunting and stone tape theory? And I tend to lean more towards stone tape theory for most of the things that people experience. And to me, this is a really good example of stone tape theory. And when you hear that voice, I'm here, or someone's here, it sounds like a recording, and something triggered that. And that's how stone tape theory works. Stone tape theory is basically the magnetic fields of the area that these events are taking place in are recording, more often than not, repetitive actions, things that take place all the time in an area. And then something happens that triggers that. So it's kind of like you hitting, not that anybody has one anymore, but a cassette player. Skipper knows this from back in the day, and CDs work much the same way. CDs are magnetic, and so were cassette tapes. The reason that those work is because it's a form of magnetism. And so when you hit the play button on a CD player or on a cassette tape, it's the magnetism that's being picked up and then releasing the sound. So with stone tape theory, the basis of it is that the magnetic fields in an area pick up repetitive things that were happening on a regular basis, and then something triggers that. And so when you think about him, when you go back and you watch, or if you look that one up yourself and you watch it, he's shutting a booth door. That could have been a trigger that released that energy somehow. And what it released was, I'm here. And
there is some scientific explanations behind it as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there again, because, even, like pre-show, we were talking about whether or not it was limestone or granite. And Kahanu had said, well, how do buildings play, basically how do buildings play into this?
A lot of modern day like computer companies are trying to integrate quartz because it just stores so much information, and much like a CD, it's once you put that information on there once, you can never change it. It's not like other mediums, but because it stores so much, they're actually looking at using that in computers.
Right.
No, I was only asking because I had, like I was telling you pre-show, that I had that experience. Was pretty much every night that I would see a pair of legs walking down the stairs at the house I grew up in. So, so I was asking about buildings. Is that house I lived in was wood and concrete. So I wasn't sure if it's stone tape or if it's residual.
Well, so there's some debate. There are people out there who don't believe, like there are paranormal investigators that just they patently reject stone tape theory, and they always make it's always spiritual. And so I embrace stone tape theory for most things that people think of as hauntings. And admittedly, if you ever have a stone tape experience, it's freaky as hell. It is. So like when I was working at the sheriff's office, for those that don't know, I spent almost 13 years working for the third largest sheriff's office in the state of Minnesota in the detention end of the career field. Part of that career field is constant well-being checks. Staff are constantly doing well-being checks on the detainees all day long. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's never a break. It's not like, oh, well, it's Christmas. Staff are going to go home for the weekend and the detainees are going to, be locked up in their cells for the whole time. And so there's no well-being checks. No, staff are constantly walking well-being checks. And in one of the housing units that that's referred to as the intake housing unit, if you worked in what's called the master control post, which had camera access to every single housing unit, and in this case, not only did they have camera access to the intake unit, we had massive windows that allowed us to look down on the 3 individual pods that made up the intake unit. And there were multiple staff. In fact, I worked with a man this guy survived the Sudanese Civil War. William Anago is his name. He survived the Sudanese Civil War, fled Sudan, made it out through, I can't even remember, ended up going out through Libya, made it to Libya, got out of Libya, got to the United States on I think it was an asylum, became a citizen, naturalized citizen, and got hired to work in the detention center. And he refused to work in the master control unit overnight because he was terrified, because he would see shadows moving in a very methodical way across the top and lower tier of the intake unit. And I experienced this multiple times, and I finally said, oh, this is stone tape. Why? Because you're in a high stress environment. You're performing a high stress activity, which is, even though it's repetitive and it's boring, you're literally scanning people for signs of life every night, all night long, every shift, all day long. And what we often perceived as shadows moving across the upper and lower tier when you're sitting in a master control post, they weren't really shadows. It was a recording of this activity that had a high level of potential stress involved, because you didn't know if you were going to come around, look in the next cell, and somebody's going to be in there hanging themselves. And
would you say that
it's freaky? It's freaky as hell. I'll tell you. That's what I'll say.
Gotta be. Do you think that some people compared to others are more prone to see certain events than others?
I don't know that stone tape works that way. Now there's a his name's Dr. Michael Persinger, and he's a neuroscientist. And his theory in combination with stone tape is that there are things within the mind, the brain, chemically. He's a neuroscientist, so he's not approaching this from a woo-woo perspective. He's saying that there are things in the brain chemically that will pick up on cues in the environment that will manifest themselves in the brain, causing you to hear or see or both things that aren't necessarily there without you experiencing a hallucination, a psychotic hallucination, because you're picking up on certain things in the environment. And he's coupled this with stone tape theory by saying if there's this magnetic energy that's capturing these repetitive actions or these high trauma situations, let's say a car crash, at on Dead Man's Curve or something, and then somebody goes driving by and they don't know they're on Dead Man's Curve. What did you play now?
Just a car crash sound.
Yeah, so you go by and you hear a car crash sound, and you look around and there's no car crash. What he's saying is that there's something in the environment that triggers this neuro response and for lack of better terminology, a neurodivergent response in the brain. And you're like, oh, I heard something. You look around and there's nothing there. And you go, oh, I'm just hearing things. Well, you might have been just hearing things, but it could have been a release of the energy that was triggered by your presence in that place in that moment.
So that's intense to think about. What would be a trigger? And that brings me to a question again, like items, trigger items. How does that play into the stone tape theory? If it does at all?
Skipper did not do coffees with Skipper this morning. You can see it on his. He's like, Skipper's so bored.
My favorite.
But Nancy Clampett brings up a good thing too. Like, what is it? Gettysburg. That's got to be stone tape, right?
Well, I think you're dealing with a place like Gettysburg. You're probably dealing with a combination of things. You're probably dealing with a combination of stone tape and some residual haunting. And so the gunshots that people talk about hearing, like Nancy is with some of these Civil War sites, I would say that's probably far more likely to be stone tape. But the sightings of ghosts at places like Gettysburg and there's some other like Shiloh, that I would say those are probably
Nanny Clampett.
Nanny, not Nancy. I'm sorry. I would say you're probably dealing with some residual when you're talking about people seeing these ghosts. Oftentimes, so like one of the sites, I think it might have been at Gettysburg, and it may not be, but there is people that report on one of the Civil War battlegrounds. It took place right out in front of a home, and they talk about seeing this woman in white that walks to and from the home to a cemetery, and goes from the house to the cemetery, and it's not even technically a cemetery. It's actually graveyard. There's a difference between cemeteries and graveyards, but she goes from the house to the graveyard and she gets to a particular stone and she disappears. And that doesn't appear to have any triggers. There's no consistency to it. You don't know when it's going to happen. And so that seems far more residual. So that like it's picking up on the emotional energy of people who are there and experiencing. And a lot of times it's people who they're not there for the ghost experience. They're there for the historic experience. And so this apparition appears and people have caught it on video. And to me, that has more of the feel or appearance of residual because of the high energy level of the emotional response and how it's linked to the death of soldiers or loved ones in that situation, where stone tape tends to be things that are very resonant. Like, so here in my region, we have I live in Bluff Country. Skipper always picks on me living in Minnesota and say that we're flat, and I am not in flatland. Like we live.
Not that side. The other side is.
Yeah, the other side of Minnesota is like pretty flat, but Skipper lives in flat areas too. He just doesn't like to admit it. But the area where I'm at, we have massive bluffs that are hundreds, sometimes they'll be 100 feet high or higher, like these limestone cliffs. And there is a place where a alleged haunting takes place, where a wagon and horses went off this cliff at night or in a storm or something, and people are like, I keep hearing this horse and wagon and a crash around this area, and somebody's like, oh yeah, that's that horse and wagon that went off the cliffs in the 1800s. And people are like,
Is this like the
what?
Lady in White, the movie, The Lady in White from the 80s?
I can't
Every-
speak to the lady. By the way, the Lady in White is actually based on people's real life accounts of that situation, by the way. So
Yeah, it's a movie about this little boy who befriends a ghost, but every night at midnight when the tower goes off, like the ghost goes and relives its actions before it dies.
right. So that could be a couple of things. That could be residual, or it could be stone tape, just depending on
So it just depends on the amount of stress and trauma in an area, and that energy being absorbed by, let's say, like the natural minerals in the area.
well, it absorbed less by the natural minerals and more about the magnetic lines, the intensity of magnetism in the area. So, like in my region, we have massive amounts of limestone that are also. We had iron mines in the limestone region here. It was referred to as karst limestone, and we had iron mines locally. And people are like, Southeast Minnesota had iron mines. Well, what do we know about iron? Iron's incredibly magnetic. It's just natural magnetism to it. And so it would make sense that repetitive actions or high intensity situations could be recorded and then just be triggered, during an electrical storm. And now residual, those tend to be far more most residuals tend to be actual tangible. And when I say tangible, I don't mean you can touch it, but like tangible actions of what appears to be an apparition, a spirit, doing something particular, as opposed to just doing the same action every single time at the same time, every night, all the time, or every day, all the time.
Would you be able to, I don't know if this is the right word, but contact them while or if they're there, I guess? Are they intelligent?
So with stone tape, people who adhere to stone tape, and there again, I tend to see most things as stone tape. In most cases, when people say, "Oh, I experienced X," I tend to go, "Well, that's probably, if it's something, it's stone tape." You're not going to make contact with something that's being released during stone tape because it's a recording. It'd be like you trying to talk to your CD player and get an answer when from the song or the audio. With a residual haunting, you're probably dealing with something that is high energy. Now I feel like I should be watching The Shining. The Shining, yeah. It's like,
No, sir, you have always been the caretaker.
Yeah, always been the caretaker. So with residual hauntings, you're dealing with entities that are more capable of interacting. So there's a difference. So like in the first video, the video that we watched already, you're dealing with something that's not really responding to a person, right? It's responding to a situation. A door shut, or they're locking something up and they're like, I'm here, or someone's here. Go ahead.
What if you changed the layout of a specific area? Like, say there was a door previously in one area and now it's been moved over to the center of the hallway. Would this entity continue doing its thing, or would it completely end since there's no door there anymore?
Well, with stone tape, it'll probably keep doing the same thing and that's where you'll see people. I just saw somebody in the hallway and they moved right through the door.
I'm really curious on this because it feels like I'm getting the answers that I'm looking for, because I've always been curious about these types of things.
So with residuals, so I live in a really old house, and I've told this story. I think I shared the link with you. I was on Real Hauntings podcast. Maybe I didn't share this one with you. I live in a very old house, and I've had a couple of experiences in my home that are, to me, more examples of residual hauntings. And in one case, Skipper, can you find a picture of a flapper girl from like literally not somebody made up to look like a flapper girl, but like the original Prohibition flapper girls? My home at one time was a home for unwed mothers. And there's rumor that our home also functioned as kind of the local hospital for the town. It was a doctor lived here, allegedly. I don't know how much of this is true. But at one time, the home was a home for unwed mothers. And if you go back far enough, the reason they had homes for unwed mothers is that people from, dressed kind of like that. Susie would get pregnant out of wedlock and they'd send her 4 states away to go stay in this home for unwed mothers so that she wouldn't be an embarrassment to her family.
Hello, operator. I need Rochester 213.
Oh. So I've had on several occasions, I've been woke up during the day when I was on night shifts for the sheriff's office. I'd sleep obviously during the day. I would be woke up during the day thinking that it was the other half waking me up. Somebody whispering, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to get up. And there'd be a tap like on my shoulder. And I'd wake up thinking I'd overslept and I was going to be late for work. And on a couple of occasions, there was a flapper girl. I don't know how else to describe her, but a flapper girl standing there. Scared the shit out of me. Like, and then another occasion, I had fallen asleep on the couch because everybody in the house had come down with something, and I experienced, and if you're a dad, Skipper, well, Kahana, you know this too. I experienced what's referred to SSS. DS, SSSDS, psychosomatic sick dad syndrome. It's psychosomatic, it's not spelled that way, but I get psychosomatic sick dad syndrome, where if anybody in my house has anything, I'm immediately going to get it unless you stay as far away from me as humanly possible. And that means if you've got something, you're all sleeping upstairs and I'm sleeping on the couch. That's like, I don't care what it is. I doesn't work that way. And I've already been exposed, but so they all came, everybody in the house came down with some sort of like upper respiratory infection. They were all sick. And I fell asleep on the couch. And I was still in the habit of, like, even at home, I always had my personal sidearm on my hip because I had come to a place where people had been threatening to come find me where I live and hurt me merely for the fact that I was doing my job as a detention deputy. And they're like, I'm going to go I find out where you live. I'm coming to your house and I'm taking out you and your family. And so I fell asleep on the couch and I had put my 45 on the coffee table, And I woke up and there was a doctor standing over me with a scalpel. And I'm like, I thought I was having a dream at first. Yeah, no, it's freaky. Almost as freaky as looking at you in a Gru costume. And I'm like closing my eyes thinking I was having like in between waking and sleeping. And I looked again and the damn thing was still there. And we're not talking about modern, doctors outfits. I'm like, imagine late 1800s, early 1900s doctor get up
A
with
bone
that
saw.
big old
with the
disc.
cloth with the cloth mask wrapped around their face and the scalpel. And I started to reach for my sidearm because I thought somebody was in my house. I was going to shoot the son of a bitch. And then just gone. And I tell that story on the Real Hauntings podcast with Noah, and he told me, and I had to leave. I left the house. I walked 5 miles on a trail. I walked almost 5 miles out of town to tell him to type that email to tell him my story, because I did not want to tell that story, talk about it, even type about it in my house. Now I'm sitting in my house telling the story, but he and Joshua Darian, and Josh Darian is look him up on TikTok and Instagram, by the way. He's a great paranormal storyteller. And when I mean storyteller, I mean he's very good at telling about these things. He was like, I do the same thing. I will not do any EVP work in my own home, and I will not tell any of my stories in my own home. So
Yeah, I'd be worried about what I'd hear if I did some EVPs in your house.
oh yeah, I'm like, somebody's like, you should download one of those EVP apps, and I'm like, I don't believe in the EVP apps having any
The
power. And
dot
then
that you're in.
yeah, right. So I've had some the being woken up in the middle of the day is very not in keeping with what most people consider a natural haunting, right? Because everybody's like, I don't want to go to bed at night because there's something weird moving around in my house. And every house settles. I don't care how good your house is. I'm sure. I mean, Skipper, your house is way newer than mine, but I'm sure you hear settling noises even to this day that you can.
I hear things more outside of my house. This house was built in like 85. So I'm sure if I have any hauntings, it's by someone dressed as Cyndi Lauper.
Well, I
I've heard
mean,
that the house that I live in currently, we have something. I don't know. I haven't been able to see exactly what it is, but there's a shadow about knee high that goes down my hallway every day.
well,
They're here.
Yeah.
well, so Kahanu, I don't know how comfortable you are with talking about this, but you have 2 young children? It's 2.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 young children that have high intensity needs, correct?
Yes.
So that's not uncommon for people who have, especially children that are high energy. Well, yours are incredibly high energy. But their energy is also linked to their neurodivergent functionality. And that is not an uncommon experience for people with children that are
Yeah. This made me
I don't want
nervous.
to I'm trying not to
No,
be I'm trying not to be insulting because
you bring up
you
a
know
good
me.
point. Because my daughter, she goes into the hall closet and is talking to somebody sometimes. It freaks me out, man.
When my son was like 2, he'd always want me to put him to bed. And I'd put him to bed, and then like I'd be going up to bed like 45 minutes later, and he'd still be awake talking to someone in his room, and I'd be like, nope, Nope, not
no,
going in.
no. Both of my granddaughters and there again, my daughter and her family live in a house that was the home of one of the regional doctors. It was a homestead, an acreage, and this is once again a very old home. And my youngest granddaughter, I won't say her name, but we'll just call her Daisy. My youngest granddaughter will ask about her friend, if her friend can come along. Now, everybody chalks that stuff up to kids just having vivid imaginations, but my oldest granddaughter used to sit in a corner and just have like what sounded like a one-sided conversation. She wasn't making up two sides of the conversation. She was having a conversation with somebody, and only her side of it was being heard. And she was answering questions and she was asking questions. And they're again in very old home, from when I say turn of the century style home, I mean 1800s to 1900s turn of the century style home.
Do you think that there's something different about a child's brain compared to an adult's brain that allows them, I don't know the correct verbiage here, but allows them to see through the veil?
Skipper, I don't. What do you think? Because I have my idea. You need to turn your soundboard up just a little bit because.
I mean, it's possible. There's also things that they have less walls and barriers in their mind. Like anything can happen. Magic is real, type of thing. So, and knowing how our brains like to fill in the gaps. Well, at that young age, it doesn't need to. So, is that possible? I think it's potentially possible.
So I'm with Skipper. I'll flesh my position out on it a little bit more. Kids have not been indoctrinated with the mindset of deny anything that isn't explainable.
Yeah, I grew up with, like, my parents would tell me ghosts aren't real because I was always seeing things as a child, and my parents were very adamant that that's not real. You're making it up.
Right. And I mean, everybody either had an imaginary friend or had a friend that had imaginary friends. So I would say that kids just aren't inundated with this.
Clear your minds. It knows what scares you.
It's true. Mine is taxes and filling up my gas tank. But the reality is that these kids just haven't been burdened with denial. And so here's the one. So like I come from my language doesn't always reflect it. And so this isn't political or even fully religious, but I come from a very strong Christian background. My parents became Christians. They were raised Christian, but they became Christian, very Christian. I was like 2 years old. I tell people like I was such a bad kid. My parents had to get saved to deal with me. But I spent a lifetime living with parents who denied the supernatural while believing in the supernatural. I don't know if that may. So like no matter which way you slice it, if you're a devout Christian, you have to admit there's supernatural. Your scriptures teach that there are demons and in spiritual battles taking place. But what Christians tend to do is it's only God and Satan. That's God and Satan, and then like demons were a thing, but they're not a thing anymore, right? Like there's just like, well, that was then, but this is now. Like so we've got problems, but not those kind. That's not one of them, right? And I'm saying like if you're going to be a Christian and you're going to embrace the supernatural reality of God, then you have to embrace preternaturalism as well.
Yeah, so that didn't make sense with my parents. They were Christians and would say that ghosts don't exist.
But yet they believed in a spirit being.
Yes.
Well, Georgie, that's the Holy Spirit is not a ghost. We may say the Holy Ghost, but it's not the same thing. So so that that those two things are distinctly different. The Holy Spirit is God. I don't believe in ghosts the way other people believe in ghosts. Go ahead, Skipper.
I'm protected because I send all my extra cash to Joel Olstein.
$500 for 5 hours.
I pay for the premium prayers.
So, but you can. So here's the way that Christians need to start looking at this. Spirits, if you want to believe that ghosts are disembodied spirits of deceased people, and you're a Christian, then you have to go back to your scriptures. And I would say that Christian scripture doesn't allow that kind of haunting, but it does allow for say this carefully, it does allow for familiar behavior. And when I mean familiar, I don't mean, oh, hey, we knew this thing, but summoning a evil spirit like a demon mimicking a loved one. And that's where you start to see maybe some of the residual haunting stuff. Did you say skinwalkers?
Yes.
Skinwalkers are different. That's a different show. And this is where I draw this line of separation between stone tape theory versus the reality of residual hauntings. Because again, like my other half has had a shadow man experience in our home, in our bedroom. And no, I wasn't the shadow man, and I wasn't pinning her down. That's not what was happening. That was a different night. She had a sleep paralysis shadow man experience, and I observed this. I
100% believe in shadow people.
I observed her having this conversation, and the freakiest part of it is I heard the other voice, and
that's insane,
and it scared the living shit out of me. And I was trying to wake her up, and she was having a conversation. I couldn't tell what they were talking about, but the other voice, it was very, and she was responding to that. And I about fell out of bed. So now, what I don't hold to in Christian thought is that somehow you're inviting that into your life, because that's what a lot of Christians will say. So we had in an apartment that we were living in, just a few blocks from where we are now, we had an experience. We woke up one night. Do you get this is way before Kahanu's time, and Skipper's kid's child is not probably old enough to have experienced this. But those of us who are old in the audience, like me, who are over the age of 50 and have kids, you guys remember the baby swings that weren't battery operated. They were operated off of a hand crank, even up into the early 90s. They were operated off of a hand crank, and you turn that hand crank, and that hand crank has a very specific sound.
Yep, the clicking,
as almost like a Gatling gun, right? I woke up to the sound of that hand crank. I'm thinking, oh, our daughter woke up. rolled over to check on the wife to make sure that she wasn't in bed, because like I'm hearing things. She was in bed and that sound was going on, and then I heard the all too familiar sound, that kind of silence in the middle of the night, and what a baby swing sounds like when it's going. To hear I shot up out of bed, and I made the mistake of telling the pastor of the church I was going to at the time about this, and my mom we were just having a conversation. It might have been at dinner, and they both jumped up. Well, it's because you read Stephen King. You invite this into your life. You read Stephen King. And I'm like, no, like there's something happened. And it's not because I read Stephen King, right? It's just not. Like, reading Stephen King doesn't make demons manifest. So
no, that would be Harry Potter.
Well, first of all, if you find Harry Potter entertaining, you may want to branch out into things that take intellect to understand. And
there goes my whole reality.
There goes. I just lost 75% of our audience. So the what was that? I don't know. Do I believe that people have Shadow Man or Hat Man experiences? And Hat Man's a whole 2-hour episode. The shadow beings and Hat Man are massive topics. But that to me was something residual. That's not stone tape. Stone tape doesn't impact the environment that way. It doesn't actually have a physical impact. Residual hauntings and manifestations have an actual impact. And what you end up being faced with there, again, if you're Christian, and I can't speak to every other religious perspective's view on these things, is that you cannot embrace the supernatural reality of the Trinitarian God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and the adversary, Satan, and then dismiss the reality that there were demons when Jesus cast the legion into the herd of swine and drove them off of the cliff into the water, and go, well, that was then. Well, wait, no. There's no point are we ever taught in the scriptures that demons don't still have. I've experienced literally when I was still doing street ministry and on the job, I've dealt with people that I know for a fact were demon possessed. I know for a fact, and I could identify the difference between someone who's having a psychic break and someone who's just got some pure out grade A evil intent.
That sounds pretty intense. I've never had, I don't want to say pleasure, but I've never had the experiences with demonic forces like you have. I've seen shadow people, I guess, but they've never interacted with me. I've seen them go across hallways or in a mirror somewhere.
See, and there, in that reality, what you're dealing with, you could be dealing with a couple of things. You don't see as many apparitions with stone tape. You do see stone tape apparitions, but you don't see as many tangible, functioning.
Yep.
How do I want to say this? You just don't see, with stone tape, you don't see them interacting with the environment the same way that you do with a residual haunting. Does that make sense? So the guy who comes downstairs every day and every one of his cabinets is open, which of course is always, it's the trope for every scary movie out there, is the first thing you notice is all the cabinets are open. But it's always when you turn your back and then you hear a noise and you turn around and all the cabinets are open. It's kind of this tiny little, it's a lead into a jump scare. But when you talk to people who are experiencing residual hauntings, they'll come downstairs and the cabinets will be open. They'll close them. They'll go back to bed, and they'll be scratching their head going, what the hell? I thought I closed all. And then they come back down and every cabinet is open again in the morning. That is some sort of apparition that's actually working in the environment, effectuating a physical response. And what a lot of people don't understand is that takes a lot of energy. That takes a massive amount of energy. And the more often that happens, the more powerful that entity is getting. And it's feeding off of something in the home, even if the person who's experiencing it isn't intent on feeding it. And that's where like poltergeists come into.
I was just about to ask that. Would that be a poltergeist?
A lot of times it is, and it's almost always tied to
Trauma?
not even trauma. The vast majority of poltergeist activity, when you talk to people, you start to ask really hard questions, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, we've got a preteen or puberty experiencing teen girl, especially in the house. And so when you brought up the fact that you are currently seeing, a knee-high type image in your home, some sort of apparition, look at the high amount of energy and needs of your two children.
Yep.
And they have some cognitive functional struggles in communication, which leads to a lot of frustration on their part in being able to communicate to you and your wife the way you would want. And if I'm understanding how your situation breaks down, I mean, obviously I'm not there every day, even though I'm your baby daddy. The how much of that is energy? How much of that, not that they're inviting it, but how much of that is that energy in them that's escaping and causing that? And so as they get older, if that energy increases, if that demand increases, you might start to see more and more activity, like things flying off.
About that. I definitely don't want shit flying around the house.
It could literally be, something flying off a knickknack flying out across the room and shattering against the wall. So I'm going to bring up Stephen King again. One of the best stories that outlines that psychic energy and poltergeist type activity was by Stephen King, and it was the one that really kind of launched him into superstar status, which was Carrie.
Yeah.
Carrie is a terrifying story because you have a story here of a young woman who's being victimized and abused by her mother constantly. And there's a lot more to it, but when you look at that, you can see the poltergeist type of activity where Carrie is able to manipulate things. And by the end, obviously, she's got control of it. So, poltergeists especially are very fascinating topic. And there are, so even wise angels here. And there are a lot, varied opinions on what poltergeists are and aren't and what they could be, but they are not exclusively, but very frequently tied to puberty and prepubescent children, especially girls, because girls experience a massive amount of psychological and physiological changes in ways that guys can't even begin to understand in that time frame. Guys just run around horny all the time. So, and then it never ends. So
question on that then, do you think, I don't know, again, the correct verbiage, but a poltergeist, is it intelligent, or is it going from the thoughts of whoever created it?
Well, it depends on what your view of what a poltergeist poltergeist is. Some people will say, so poltergeist is very old world German, and in Geist in German is ghost. But psychic researchers and paranormal researchers are seeing it a far different way. They're not seeing it. They're not. Go ahead.
Is it a psychic power per se that
It's a manifesting so how they're seeing it is that it's a psychic power that's unknown to the person who's experiencing it or unleashing it, unbeknownst to them. They don't know that it's happening to them. They don't know, and that's why they'll have an argument with mom or dad, and boys tend to argue with dad more, and girls tend to argue with mom more. And so, daughter will have an argument with mom. She'll go off into her room, and the next thing you know, there's glasses flying off the shelf in the kitchen, and everybody's like, "What the is going on?" What's that from? Is that the energy of the moment that's so why is it saying attracting a spirit, or is that something psychical experience that the girl doesn't know she's causing? And that was one of the original theories of the Amityville story, was that it might have been poltergeist, and then obviously you have the Warrens stepped in and declared that it was demonic. And there are people on both sides of this paranormal and supernatural research area that have their own particular views about Ed and Lorraine Warren, whether they were legitimate or not. But the Warrens, kind of like, no, this is actually dangerous and deadly, obviously, as it turned out. So what you see with poltergeist is very, very rarely does a poltergeist experience result in a manifestation of harm to the family or to the person. Whereas with demonic activity, you're talking about like severe harm and threat to the family and to the individual, clearly. And so
in my head, I have a bad understanding of this. Is it possible that a poltergeist or whatever it is could be recorded into the stone tape and then constantly being fed and having to stay there?
I've never had a situation arise where I had to think about it that way. I don't know. I suppose. I mean, all of this is theory, right?
Right.
All of this is theory. No matter how much somebody thinks they know about this stuff, there's just no way of knowing for a fact.
Because that's a massive amount of energy to manifest itself to move something, let alone like making sound, banging a door, but to constantly be doing that. I don't know. That's pretty scary to think about.
I'm gonna empty the entire magazine on my experiences if we keep it up. So do not get a Ouija board and try to conjure something. No, Harry, no, do not, never, ever advise people, especially people who aren't prepared to deal with it. Do not open your home to a Ouija board. Ever. That is terrible advice. I don't care if you're joking or not. Don't ever advise anybody to do that.
That's a subject for another show too, man. It's like, how did that even come about? But anyway, stay on the phone.
So I'm convinced, and so here's and I won't call this residual or stone tape. I'm convinced that I had a visitation from my grandfather on his way out of the world. And my other half will remember this night very well. The night that my grandfather died, and I hate that term, passed away. Like, we're human beings. People are dead or they're alive. My grandfather died. The night my grandfather died, at the moment that they pinpointed his time of death, I had come home from work. My daughter was an infant. I was a senior line chef at a restaurant, and we were going to go to a movie. And so I had rushed home, jumped in the shower, and it was like, if I remember the time correctly, it was like 5:05 or 6:05 or something like that. And all of a sudden, somebody grabbed my ear and pinched it very hard. And my grandpa was an old world German, like literally born in Germany. And he had farmer's calluses on his hands. And that was one of the ways he'd get your attention when you were. Grandma grabbed the back of your arm. Everybody's had that person in their life, right? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Skipper grew up in Ohio. I know he had a family member that pinched the back of his arm. See, I even said he grabbed my ear, pinched it incredibly hard, and I was like, ow! And then the water went ice cold. Grandpa used to grab the back of your ear when you were in trouble, or grab your ear and pinch it and twist it when you were in trouble. And then, as a joke, if he thought you'd been in the shower at his house for too long, he would run ice cold water right out of the well tap, walk into the bathroom, and throw the water on you without saying a word. So I got the pinch on the ear and the ice cold water at the moment that they're convinced he died in his front yard. And I told the other half, I'm like, why did you flush the toilet? She goes, I wasn't in there. How did I flush the toilet? That's the only thing I could think of. And then on our way back from the movie, we got the phone call, or when we got home from the movie, we got the phone call that Grandpa had died at such and such a time. And that was it.
That's pretty convincing to me.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how else to explain it.
I've had one personal poltergeist activity type thing that I've experienced when I was younger. We had something in our house that would open up the cupboards in the kitchen, and then my father, to this day, denies that it ever happened. But we would close them, and they would open back up. And we were two bachelors living alone, and we had no glass in the house other than this glass mixing bowl, and it was on the bottom shelf all the way in the back. And we're watching the X-Files of all things at this time, and we hear glass breaking, and we both look at each other like, what? We know what that was that broke, but who's going in the kitchen to check? So, of course,
big brave Hawaiian warriors are you?
Yeah.
You go.
So I go in there and I look, and sure enough, the glass mixing bowl is broken, and it's just sitting in the back of the shelf. All the cupboards are open again, and yeah, he still denies it ever happened, but I can see it clear as day. And then
that would be unsettling.
We moved within like 2 weeks. We're out.
It's funny. He denies it happens, but hey, we're getting out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're far afield from Stone Tape, but I think this is a really important conversation, especially going forward with the show, is to really begin to understand that not everything that you experience that you can explain is a ghost, right?
Right.
So I run into people all the time. I saw an orb. I'm like, no, you didn't. You saw a bug in light. No, I caught it on video. Yeah, that's not an orb. Like, that's not what that is.
Hey, Sasquatch.
but it followed me. I'm like, well, it was a dust particle, and it just happened to catch, ambient light just right. You'd have for me to believe your orb experience, it would need to literally be devoid of any dust in the room or any tiny flying bugs. And it just people come to me all the time like, hey, look at this, I got an orb. And I'm like, no.
So, what? Where should we move on from this for the next show?
Well, at this rate, there probably won't be another show because Georgie's threatening to pinch me for talking too much. So
Sasquatch is real. So, Skipper and I, we got to plan that trip to go to Joshua Tree.
you're gonna go hunt? Are you gonna go hunt the cactus man?
Yucca Man.
We're gonna go hunt him,
Or
and we're gonna go
Yucca Man, yeah.
the
Yeah,
Yucca
Yucca
Man
Man.
and Sassy the Sasquatch.
Well, you won't find a Sasquatch in Joshua Tree. It's too hot.
There are sightings of Yucca Man.
Different subspecies.
Yeah, but we do get bear that sometimes wander from Big Bear Mountain, San Gregorio Mountain, wander into the desert. That does happen. So, we'll see.
I definitely want to go into UFOs for a future show. I'm pretty sure that there's
you
a
want to
lot
go
of people.
into the UFOs, or you want to go into the topic? Because
Well,
I'm
I
not going
wanna
into
probe
any
them.
UFOs with you. No.
I'm gonna probe them so good.
That's a big one for
And
the area that I live. There's a lot of UFO watchers, but we're also next to a military base. So a lot of discussions of that in my area. And I want to get into this this asteroid meteor A1 or A3 Atlas, which has entered into our solar system from another solar system, and there's a lot of discussion about it.
It's supposed to be bigger than Lamuamua.
okay,
I believe
can you
it's-
speak English, please?
Sorry, Earth Killer.
Yeah, I believe it's like 13 miles across, and it's gonna come close to Mars's orbit. But there are people who are out there saying that it's giving off a radio frequency, and yeah,
Some people think it's artificial.
Well, at this point, if anybody in the government's talking about it being real, it's a false flag, and it's probably Iran that's doing it.
I have not seen the government talking about any radio frequencies, but I have seen people on TikTok and whatnot talking about that it's emitting radio frequencies.
So that brings into a good subject. Have you ever heard of the Black Knight satellite?
Oh yes, I've gone down that rabbit hole, and we can go through that.
Or Planet X.
Yeah, Planet X, and then there's supposed to be 2 other exoplanets that can support life, but we'd be dead way before we make it.
Yeah, it's like waiting for us to get a show started on time.
Wah.
Well, what about the 11/11 phenomenon?
I'm not too knowledgeable on it. I briefly know a little bit.
So people could say what they want, but I have an 11/11 phenomenon. I started experiencing 11/11, and it's obviously 11/11 is only modern in the sense of the advent of actual digital clocks. Because no one ever, could see 11/11 on a clock, the way they were for many years, where you actually had to learn how to tell time. But I used to have an 11/11 experience clocks. I was working at a grocery store, and people's bills would come up to 11:11. It was just constantly in my life, all the way up until when my dad was killed. And my dad was killed in 2005 in a work accident, and we got the coroner's report from the coroner, from the pathologist, and they went through and they were inventorying everything that was on his person when they got his body at the morgue, and he had exactly $11.11 in change in his pocket. And since then, I haven't experienced 11:11 once. Not once. I'm not saying I've never looked at a clock and not seen 11:11 on the clock, but I have not had it happen at, just like wake up at 11:11 and see it on my phone, or, get told that somebody's address is 1111 11th Street or anything like that. I don't know how to explain it. It just vanished from my life as a phenomenon. Just gone.
What's RH?
RH. What?
Georgie said, let's talk RH.
I don't know what RH is.
Okay.
I don't know.
So, does anybody in the chat have any suggestions for future shows? I'm going to try to put together a Halloween special. I'm going to try to talk to Preston Castle about getting in for a hunt. Let's see what comes about that.
Skipper, play that last one.
Oh. Stand by.
The EVP at number 7 on our list is one of the more disturbing pieces of data collected by APRA. The EVP was collected in Villisca, Iowa at the Villisca Axe Murder House, the former home of J.B. Moore and his family. It was here that he, his wife, his 4 children, and 2 guests of his eldest daughter, Catherine, were tragically slain in their sleep. The murderer was never found. The EVP collected was that of a man screaming. Due to the pain evident in this scream, many speculate it is the scream of J.B. Moore himself.
www.apraparanormal.com.
That's
So
intense scream.
Yeah, I grew up 15 miles from that place. I've been to that house, took my daughter there for her 21st birthday because she was fascinated by the story. I've been into that house, and I'm telling you, there is stuff in that house. It is.
So stone tape or residual?
I would say stone tape. It was when you walk through, and I didn't experience anything there, but I would say most of the stuff that so I have a really good friend who's still down in that area, and her and her daughter played ball with something, rolling a ball back and forth. And they actually moved so that they were on the down slope side, where the thing would have to roll. Like it couldn't be the ball just rolling up a hill, that they were rolling it up a hill and then it was rolling back to them. They sat on the upslope, excuse me. They sat on the upslope side of the floor, and they would roll the ball, and the ball would roll up the tiny little slope on the floor back to them. So that, sounds like a kid to me, rolling a ball from jacks back and forth. But a lot of what you hear from people about the Villisca Axe Murder House is screams, and shouting. And I would say a lot of that is tied to the intensity. No idea who killed this family and the 2 girls that were friends. No idea. They tried every which way under the sun to solve the crime back then, and they never had a resolution. Never found resolution. So I went to school with the guy who manages that place now. So
Do you think you could get in there to do a ghost hunt or investigation?
well, I'm sure I could, but it's a 6-hour drive for me. So
Oh, you could spend the night.
the hell you say? So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I know. And now we were doing the walkthrough and this is where funny happens, right? So you have to admit that people go into places like this and they're just like everything's an experience, right? So there was kind of a quintessential, you could just tell this person was the kind of person that spent all their time eating Hostess cupcakes and watching paranormal shows on TV, if you know what I mean. And she's on the steps in front of my daughter and I with her, whoever, I don't know, was. And she's like, oh my gosh, I just walked through the coldest spot I've ever walked through in my life. Something's with us. And I'm like, ma'am, there's an air conditioner right above you. It was literally blowing cold air. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
I'm like you can't be so invested in having an experience that every little thing that happens is an experience. Does you know what I mean? Does that?
Yeah.
Because if you walk in expecting to experience something, you are not going to experience anything legitimate just because you're going to see everything as that. Somebody whispering or talking, on the first floor in the kitchen to the property owner is going to sound like a voice to you. And so you have to try and be as objective as possible. And you lose some of that objectivity when you start to do paranormal research. And the reality is that a good researcher, their focus is going to be on debunking every single experience to explain it away.
Definitely. And then there's like the things that happen at home, I don't automatically go, oh, that had to be a spirit.
Well, yeah, it can't, something's going on in our house. And even the other half is like at the point now where she's like, what? Because we're getting voices and sounds when the house is very quiet that aren't coming from outside. And she's even like recognizing it now. And it's only been since her heart attack. So I don't know.
Do you think that say when spirits talk that they want to talk to specific people, or do they just try to reach out to anybody that can hear them?
Again, I would say, I think I'd be very, very careful in attributing something that's intending to reach a very specific person on a repeated basis as a spirit in the sense of a past loved one. I'd say it's probably a darker influence than that. And that's what had me worried when the other half had her sleep paralysis shadow man experience. The fact that I was intently observant of that. And now she's had this, you guys know how close I came to losing her back on November 13th. And now I've had some of these repeated situations in the house where something moving in the hallway. Well, here an example. I saw something moving in the hallway, and she goes, "Oh, it's just the dog." I said, "Honey, the dog's downstairs asleep." And she's like, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Because his claws click on the floor when he walks on the floor." This walked right past the bedroom door, went into the bathroom, and I got up to look, and I went in there. One, there was no clicking. Two, went into the bathroom, and there was nothing there. And you know, dogs don't just miraculously develop the ability to walk silently at night. I wish they did, because we had to put a baby gate up at the bottom of the stairs to keep him from coming up at the stairs in the middle of the night looking for attention, because the click clack of his paws was so annoying, and he was so unsettled by something that he was coming up every half hour for a few months, to the point where I'm like, what's wrong with the dog? So you do want to explain things away in a rational and objective way, but you also don't want to go overboard and just like say, no, that's nothing.
So I have a question. I haven't really brought this up to anybody else. I had an experience once, but the question is, do you think that being on a different level mentally, like say you're drunk out of your mind and you have a conversation with somebody for a couple hours, and the next morning when you wake up, everything is still locked up, like the front door is locked and this person's not in the house anymore? Do you think that, what I'm getting at is, do you think that being on a different state of mind opens doors?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if alcohol is as conducive to that as you would see with some other things, but I talk to anybody who's done ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is, or peyote. It literally it opens up doors for sure.
Sasquatch.
I see Sasquatch's comments, but I also don't, and this is just me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I've talked to a lot of other people that have done research and whatnot. You do not want to ever get in the position where you're comfortably embracing every supernatural, and I prefer preternatural as opposed to supernatural. You don't want to embrace every preternatural, supernatural experience that you think you're having with somebody, one of your loved ones being trapped here trying to communicate with you. You're putting yourself in a very dangerous position when you do that.
I've always had a problem when people don't respect my boundaries, and I did have someone who kept trying to sneak a dream catcher into my house, even though I did not want a dream catcher anywhere in my house.
Well, especially if you're not native,
Right.
You know, for one, I'm not one of those people that gets all really bent up about cultural appropriation, because I come from a long line of Vikings. So, you know, people don't mind culturally appropriating my people, but oh, speaking of noises that scared me, Charlie, come here. Come here. You guys want to meet Charlie? Just a second.
Is it a ghost?
Hi, Charlie. Come to Grandpa for me. You come for coffee? Yeah. Come meet. Come meet.
Yeah, and I had a 2.5, 3 hour conversation with something that wasn't even there the next morning. This was a couple years ago. But
Say hi, Charlie.
hey, Charlie.
This is my youngest grandchild. Hi, he says. Can you wait? Can you say hi? Yeah, there you go. Hi. Look at you. You're on TV. What is that? Is that freaky, Grandma? Did you come home with Grandma to make coffee? Hi. Okay, let's go back to Grandma.
Hey, Skipper, have you had any unexplained occurrences or experienced any poltergeist stuff before?
Not here. I'll hear stuff at night, but I also get coyotes and roadrunners and just different desert animals. I did have a roommate who believed that she was sensitive, and she had asked me one day, why in our backyard were there so many spirits? She said there's spirits of children, uh, and there was a swing set, and she goes, they're attracted by the swing set. She goes, I get that, but there's all these others that are out there, and the land that was right behind our property actually belonged to the park, Joshua Tree National Park. And I said, well, I can tell you, like 30 people every year die in the park. And she goes, okay, that could explain it because they're angry. They're not happy. And so, I mean, I couldn't see it or anything, but she was convinced of that. And then the only thing that I could have ever experienced myself was when I was at Quantico and I was a corporal or a lance corporal, I had to take care of many cemeteries. There's like 28 cemeteries aboard Quantico and old family plots and stuff. So I would go out there with a lawnmower and a weed whacker and just, make it all look nice. And there was one that was the oldest one. In fact, we do know that Stonewall Jackson, his leg obviously was hit by a cannon, but they believe it was buried somewhere aboard Quantico. And this was in one of the older cemeteries. And a local older man who was a historian, he said, "Yeah, we think it was buried here. We just can't, prove it." But that plot of land was very early settlers, and we believe there was even Native Americans who had been buried there. And I went in; it was deep in the woods. I went in there, cleaned it up, and everything. And on my way back, I was putting all the equipment back into the van that I had, and I was grabbing the last few things, which was gas can, and I was shoved with what felt like two hands from behind, and I was out there completely by myself, and that's the only thing I've ever experienced.
That's intense.
That's enough for me right there. Look, I was not new. I thought this was one of Skipper's long build-ups to one of his really bad dad jokes.
It was like okay, you're
And
done.
I
Get the
found
hell out.
Stonewall Jackson's leg,
It was like you're done, just get out of here. But I was notorious for that job because I had a master gunnery sergeant who was like, "Look, you go get the vehicle in the morning," and he's like, "You don't come back here until after 1500." He goes, "I do not want to see you." So that left me a lot of time to kill. I could get all those like do all my stuff within like a week or two. So I eventually started like taking my fishing pole and fishing at the various spots on that base and stuff like that just to kill time. But I would take my time on those jobs, and I think that was what it was. It was like you took your time, get the hell out.
It was probably some just old, like the residual spirit of some dead gunny. And then you heard, "Get out of here, devil dog." And then you're like, "Oh, you want to fight, huh?"
Like that movie with Michael J. Fox that he can see the dead people, and was it R&D Emery's out there in the field? Get out of here, you worthless bigot!
Is that the one where he's like the investigator and
Yeah, he's a paranormal investigator, but he can see the ghosts.
The Frighteners, I think it is.
yeah, the
Yeah,
frighteners?
and when he goes into the cemetery, they all start waking up because they want to talk to him. But Arlie Ermey's ghost is trying to make them all rest.
Get back in your graves!
Yeah, I I'm looking forward to other vets reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'd love to tell my story." And especially if they're looking for like everyday normal scientific in the sense of what could this have been? Explanation as opposed to just wanting to be affirmed. Um I've asked multiple people like what could this have been besides, this bad experience, whether like the 11/11 phenomenon experience that I had. Was it just was it just a coincidence? Because, you know, correlation and causation aren't, always linked to one another. And
And it,
what could have the experience, with the grabbing in my ear in the cold water have been, the moment my grandpa died. And so that's what I think especially with the purpose of this show, talking to other vets, is one, it's a safe place to tell your story. Two, can we walk through these things and say what's actually happening here? And um, no, I will not advocate us doing Ouija boards or automatic
no,
writing as part of the show. I will not take part in seances, bloodletting rituals. I'm okay with. So
sacrifice to Odin.
no, that's what we have. That's what we have. The Polynesians, we sacrifice them to Odin. So,
We'll eat you.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So
I have a
go ahead.
question. Is it possible, like, I don't know what you would consider a major haunt or a very bad haunt, but is it possible that ley lines could possibly play into the stone tape?
Oh, I think that's a very strong possibility.
Because I know
Um,
that I'm too knowledgeable on that, but aren't ley lines also magnetically based?
yeah, I mean that's how they, people believe early navigation happened. Was there was just this natural flow of, you know, adapting to feel is really what it was. Ley lines and the magnetic sphere, or not spheres, but the magnetic lines. They believe that's how a lot of, early navigation happened. It wasn't just by stars, because a lot of the seafaring peoples would travel even, in cloudy skies, and were still able to get to where they were going without any problem. So there's something innately, there's something built into humanity, and animals in particular, that are able to follow paths, unseen paths. And I think we're crazy if we try to dismiss that as being, oh, they fly to those exact same spots all the time, no problem, clear skies, cloudy skies, and never miss a beat if you in getting where they're going. If we cannot at least begin to approach it from the perspective of, there is something natural about the apparent preternatural ability of human beings to travel and animals to travel, and then turn around and dismiss and say that that can't have any other impact on us at all. Does that make sense? So it's like, migratory tribes, migratory animals, they're following something. So that there has to be something there when it comes, especially to stone tape theory and ley lines. There just has to be. And
That we could probably get deeper into ley lines for sure on a different episode. But I agree with you that, again, animals, especially with the ley lines, they don't fly around with a compass. You know, they're like, "Oh, north is this way or south is this way. Let's head this way, guys."
Your buddy Caucasian Sasquatch says that he has a odd direction sense and can get home from anywhere, even super drunk. So that may not be navigation sense. That might be self-preservation.
All right, guys, I think we should wrap it up. Don't want to make everybody just stare at us.
We could just sit here and freeze and act like we're having connection issues. Oh. So you gonna have any video coming out for our unexplained stuff coming up there, AVA? I know you went to the VA on Friday.
No, nothing actually happened. I was actually everybody left me alone.
That's
Nobody came chasing me down the hallway.
that's supernatural in and of itself.
Yeah, it is. That was unexplained.
That's definitely unexplained. Skipper, you got anything coming out?
Nothing major. I'll be doing coffee with the skipper this week. I've talked with someone. We've been throwing this thing around about watching Monday Night Football in like a Discord, and then just
You don't
doing
do Discord.
commentary over it.
You don't do Discord.
I don't, but this other individual does, and wants me to be a part of it. And I said, I'm open to it. Yeah, some people want me to do more puppet videos because some people do not like my puppet videos.
We're not talking about that here. This is not the place for that conversation.
I need a TC puppet.
Why?
So, if anybody out there, if you're a veteran or know a veteran that has a freaky, unexplained, preternatural, supernatural, paranormal,
That's better. Don't ask veterans for freaky, unexplained stories because they'll tell you about all the girls they met in the Philippines.
we don't need your peanut butter stories.
So I was in Thailand one time.
Suddenly, it started to hurt.
Why does it hurt when I pee?
The old Eddie Murphy bit. Dr. Fire shoots out my dick. You mean you're experiencing a burning sensation when you urinate? No, literally, Doc. Fire shoots out the end of my dick. I was in the backyard peeing the other day and I caught the neighbor's bush on fire. But no, I'm looking forward to it. So, audience, feel free if there's a topic that you would like to see us talk about, or if there are videos that you would like to see us talk about, send them to Skipper or AVA in particular on this one, so that we can look at them. One of us can look at them ahead of time and see if they're worth looking at. Send your veteran friends to us. This is for vets.
It's a safe place.
It's a safe place for vets to talk about these things and not be made fun of much. So
I may use the soundboard.
So yeah, I'm enjoying it, and thanks to Skipper and Georgie for putting together the 3-minute opening so that we had less time to worry about swearing.
Yeah, it's a pretty creepy song.
Little creepy, but sets the tone.
Yeah,
we'll keep working on it though.
Yeah, we'll give you guys a heads up. Probably going to be at least an every other week.
At least,
so we have time to talk about topics and get there and find interesting videos. So
I think it went very well today, and
it felt like a train wreck, but that's okay.
Now I feel a lot more comfortable now.
Good, because this is your puppy. That's the only reason why I did the opening, like I said I would, because you were like, I don't want to do it. I'm scared. Big pansy.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
At least you're willing to go to the VA. I haven't gotten up the balls to do it yet, so.
Don't worry, I got enough horror stories for you.
In keeping with the theme of the show.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Wait, did you say horror stories?
Horror stories. That's right.
Horror stories. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Unexplained. I don't Skipper. How many people have we had watching today? 20.
We've had close to 30 people like the whole time. It was pretty
Awesome.
steady. People were coming in, going, on different platforms.
Not bad, guys. Everybody, tune in tomorrow for finally another episode of TC and Friends Monday Night Musings. Very, very interesting story. So a little over an hour, so it's one of my shorter ones. So, but you guys will enjoy it.
All right. I got to get back to my screaming children.
Yeah, before a shadow creature appears again.
Yeah,
And on,
we're gonna
and
have
on
to.
that,
You and I are gonna have to talk about that offline.
and on that note, get us out of here, Skipper.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.